Good morning. Thanks for starting your morning with Wake Up America. It is Tuesday, January 13th. I'm Charlotte McBride.
And I'm Hark Lauder. We start this morning at the White House, where today President Trump meets with his team to figure out what to do about Iran. And military force, yes, it remains on the table. But the president already took some action last night, ordering a 25% tariff on any country that does business with Iran. This as protests stretch past the 2-week mark. Human rights activists report the death toll now surpasses 600. And this is disturbing. Tomorrow, the Iranian regime plans to execute the first protester by public hanging. We'll bring you the latest on what that means for the U.S. coming up.
Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, the clock is ticking fast to avoid another government shutdown in just 17 days. The Senate has fortunately made some progress, voting overwhelmingly Monday to advance one of the spending packages, including the DOJ. But even with that done, Congress still has to pass 6 more bills. The Senate will vote again today with the hopes that there won't be any hiccups from Democrats. 3 United States lawmakers joining us this morning, including Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn, to tell us if another shutdown may really be on the table.
And as tensions escalate in Minneapolis over last week's deadly ICE shooting, state officials in both Minnesota and Illinois file a lawsuit against the Trump administration before enforcing federal law. That's right, they want a judge to block the surge of ICE agents into the states, accusing the administration of racially profiling its citizens and targeting Minnesota because of its Democrat leadership. Of course, this comes right after Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says that hundreds more federal agents will soon head to the Twin Cities. There are a lot of things to unpack this morning on that.
And that is where we start, in Minnesota. And here's Minnesota's Democrat Attorney General Keith Ellison on the new lawsuit against the Trump administration. Take a listen.
We're here to announce a lawsuit we're filing against the United States Department of Homeland Security to end the unlawful, unprecedented surge of the federal law enforcement agents into Minnesota.
So this comes as the administration does order hundreds of additional federal immigration agents to surge into that state this week as the Department of Homeland Security looks to bolster protections and security of its own ICE agents.
So let's bring in our panel this morning. Bobby Everly, Republican strategist and chairman of Texas's Fort Bend County Republican Party, and Ike Wingate, host of the Ike Wingate Show and Newsmax contributor. Great to have you both with us this morning. So, Bobby, protests continue against ICE as they ramp up their investigations and say they're arresting the worst of the worst. They released that list, including illegal immigrants convicted of murder in their home countries, rape of children. So if I was living there, I would be grateful that these violent offenders are off the streets. But Democrats, they're complaining about this. Why?
Well, but that's because there's this major disconnect between what the American people or your average citizen, your average resident in a neighborhood wants, as far as, basic government provisions such as safety, security, and what the Democrats sow through their socialist policies, which is chaos and anarchy and disorder. And when those come together, you see something like Minnesota, where the police, the local police, aren't even doing anything. These fireworks are now being shot at ICE agents. I mean, there's very big threats out there, and yet the Democrats and whatever they can control are doing nothing about it. And this lawsuit just perpetuates that. What they really want to do is have ICE unable to stop protesters, to engage with them at all, which allows the protesters, because they'll be unchecked by the Democrat law enforcement or the Democrat leadership, to just keep going and become more and more emboldened. And that puts ICE agents even more at danger.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, Axios is out with this headline this morning: Inside Democrats Brewing War over the resurgence of defund ICE. And it quotes, last week's shootings in Minneapolis and in Portland have supercharged a push by Democrats in Congress to use an upcoming government funding deadline to slash funding for ICE. Now, some want to roll back funding to previous levels. Others want to abolish ICE. Did they not learn defund the police is bad politics? It didn't work for them the first time around, and here they go again.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mark. That is one of the rippling negative political stands that Democrats took that just continues to be brought up years later. And so it is not smart at all. What I find very ironic or hypocritical is that under Obama, who was nicknamed the deporter in chief, We topped out at 400,000 deportations in one of his top years. The Trump administration has not gotten there yet on just organic ICE deportations. A lot of self-deportations have happened, which is very efficient. But we didn't see this outrage. We didn't see these lawsuits. We didn't see any of the liberal media running cover and presenting Renee Good as a mother rather than a trained protester. We didn't see any of this. And so this is political theater because the Trump administration is doing it. They're very effective. But if you really want to go by the numbers, they should have been far, far more upset under the Obama administration.
Yeah, great point. And I want to pivot to this because we know the fallout continues now after the Justice Department's decision to launch that criminal investigation into Fed Chair Jerome Powell. So from all living former Federal Reserve chairs putting out a resounding statement for the support of the current chair, saying that the reported criminal inquiry is an unprecedented attempt to use prosecutorial attacks to undermine independence. Then there's a few headlines. Politico, which to no surprise has this, GOP angst growing over Powell investigation. And then the New York Times as well, saying Trump's attack on the Fed is already backfiring. I don't like the word attack there in that headline, but again, it's the New York Times, Bobby. The president says he has nothing to do with this. What do you think is happening here?
Well, I think what's going on is with this investigation, you know, I think it's driven by this renovation, there's kind of mismanagement in what's going on with Powell. But Powell's whole organization, his whole infrastructure has been corrupted by anti-Trump, Trump derangement syndrome employees. And the whole thing needs to be rooted out. There was an undercover video the other day showing employees saying, hey, we like what Powell's doing because he's putting the check to Trump, and Trump's crazy and he's off, on the fringe. This is what needs to be rooted out. We can't have government entities, and I know the Reserve and Powell are supposed to be independent, but we can't have these at odds with the elected president of the United States who is charged, has a mandate to deliver for the American people. And yet it seems like the bureaucracy at every single turn is trying to push against Trump, which the American people voted for. So there is that disconnect, and I think Powell needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, obviously, there's a lot of talk about Article 2 does not say some of the executive power rests with the president. It says all of the executive power rests with the president. But to that point, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reportedly advising the president on his short list for the next Fed chair. And he said the federal investigation into Jerome Powell basically made, quote, a mess of this situation. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt maintains the president not involved. Take a listen.
Did the president ever direct DOJ officials to open an investigation into Powell?
No. One thing for sure, the president's made it quite clear, is Jerome Powell is bad at his job. As for whether or not Jerome Powell is a criminal, that's an answer the Department of Justice is going to have to find out.
I mean, Ike, this thing seems to be mishandled again. It's DOJ. Do you think Pam Bondi is in any kind of jeopardy because of this?
I don't know about because of this. I mean, Jeanine Pirro, the district attorney for Washington, D.C., put out a tweet last night that said this actually isn't a true indictment. This was about getting records and information regarding this renovation. And Powell and his team didn't cooperate. They ignored it. And so this is a request for information to try to understand exactly how these numbers got all crazy, and was there dishonesty before Congress. And so I don't think that this is going to amount to any big negative for Pam Bondi or even the Trump administration, but it kind of shows you that Powell is willing to go political. He put out that video before anyone said anything. Reminded me a lot of James Comey.
Right.
I'm not sure if we're going to hear Powell talk about his favorite Taylor Swift songs on video anytime soon, but it is clear that Powell is playing politics, and this is ridiculous. While the big renovation happens, they have kept these rates at terrible levels, not in coordination with what's going on, and it's hurt the American people. And it is, of course, as Bobby said, it's time for Powell to go.
Yeah, that was such a bizarre video that he put out there the other day.